I guess what we're saying is find what works for you, but I mean, for the love of God, do something.
And the thing for me that, I wouldn't want anyone to be doing, consciously or not, is just being like, oh, I'm strong, I'm tough, I can work through it. Like, what's strong about stressing yourself so much that you end up in the hospital?
You're listening to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And this week we are talking about health, how to stay healthy as you get older, what we are doing successfully and unsuccessfully to keep our bodies in shape. We're coming at this topic because around this time last year we talked about the dad bod and how it comes to us all as we get older. But as we've learned, there are things you can do to kind of offset it. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, Brandon, if our listeners want to reach out to us, where can they find us?
You can chat with us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. Please give us a like or a follow there. You can also email us directly at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com, and then you can catch this and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
That's right. So, Brandon, what's new with Noah this week?
Well, we're just kind of trying to figure out what's going on with the teething. I mean, I'd say that we talked last week, and the teething was keeping us up a couple nights for several hours. And the good news is that we've pretty much moved beyond that. Haven't been kept up throughout the night. I'm knocking on wood here in a week or so. Little, like, moments of fussing where it seems like it's going to happen. And, I just want to give props to my wife. She has developed a very solid technique that I will share for everyone as a free tidbit here, free parenting advice. So if you're going through the teething thing and it kind of feels like you want to just see if it's maybe like the real full-blown thing or not, the instinct is to be like, oh, they're teething, I'm going to have to go in there and deal with this. And you want to go in there and you want to pick them up. This is the big challenge when it comes to any kind of sleep training or dealing with anything. The instinct is to pick them up and to help them and to, cuddle them and make them feel better. Well, whenever you do that, you also run the risk of them not wanting to go back down again into the crib. So what we've been doing the last couple times as like the starting point is go in there, get the passy, get whatever it is that, makes them feel comfortable to start with, and don't pick them up, and just kind of give them some contact. Like put the hand on them, kind of rub a little bit, make them know that you're there. Because most likely, or at least what's been happening with my son, is like he will maybe be in pain a little bit, a little soreness from the teething, and so he kind of starts crying a little bit, but he doesn't move, he doesn't get up because he's tired, right? It's the middle of the night.
Yeah.
He would much prefer, if he could, to just keep sleeping, right? Just
definitely.
like any of us.
Yeah.
If you wake up with pain or whatever, you gotta go to the bathroom, you'd rather probably just keep sleeping. And so just kind of give him something to soothe him, and then just kind of a gentle soothing as well, just kind of stay there with contact. And then after, a few seconds of doing that, when they kind of settle, you can kind of take away the contact, but wait. Because a lot of times what he'll do is he might cry out maybe 3, 4, 5 times, 30 seconds or a minute apart. So kind of hang around a little bit, especially after the initial kind of outburst, just to make sure if they kind of like whine a little bit more, go back in with the contact again, just kind of, again, remind them you're there with that touch. And it might take 2 or 3 goes of that. As long as it doesn't drag on for, I would say, like 5 to 10 minutes where they just like constantly crying.
Yeah.
Or if they're definitely just crying nonstop or just sitting up or anything like that. The difference, the kind of gray area and what's always difficult is like when is the moment where you got to like switch gears. But I would say the signs that are working for us is if he's not moving and not getting up himself and he's not consistently whining, he's just kind of doing like the and then he kind of calms, and then maybe it revs back up again after a minute. You can maybe kind of fight through that a little bit and help them kind of fight through it, because it's good for everybody. Like, if we're being honest, like, it's good for you because you can maybe win through and then go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But that's also good for the kid. Like, it may seem, again, like with the sleep training, it's kind of cruel making them suffer through it or just deal with it. But think about the situation. Like, if you overreact and kind of maybe that actually wakes them up, that could be a problem, versus if you kind of get through that moment, everyone goes back to sleep and everyone sleeps through the night. So it's worked a couple of times. Super props to my wife for kind of figuring it out. And it's really just like with everything with sleeping or just parenting in general, it's just kind of like a guess and check system. You just got to kind of see what works, but it's been going good. So I felt like I'd shared that tidbit with everybody. That's what's been going on with us. Just, enjoying some sleep makes a big difference. What's been going on with you guys, Jesse?
Well, we are in the midst of potty training with David still.
Yes, and the saga continues.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going pretty good. We haven't had any kind of accidents with him lately. Of course, he's still in his diapers. It's not like we've transitioned or anything. But still just introducing him to the concept of the potty. And now almost every time we sit him down on it, which is usually once or twice a day right now, outside of daycare, because they do that too at daycare.
Yeah.
But almost every time he actually will go potty.
Great.
What I do, what works for us, is that I set him down on the kid potty, and then I put a book in his lap, like a board book, like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and he'll flip through it, read it, talk, babble, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then after a few minutes, he'll stand up and we'll check, and maybe there'll be something in there, maybe there won't. If there won't, he already knows to sit back down and try again.
Oh.
And every once in a while, he'll kind of look down between his legs to see if anything's going on under there. The only thing I have to stop him from doing is reaching down in there, because oftentimes he comes up with wet hands, and that's how I know he's potty. So it's still a little trial and error.
Oh my God.
And usually what I do is I'll do that to him in the evening right before bath time, and then I'll set him down in the bath, and he's learning to kind of climb into the bath on his own. The one thing he kind of hasn't figured out yet is that he's not supposed to go potty in the bath. As I start filling up the water, he adds a little water of his own, then I have to rinse everything out and make sure that there's no pee in the in the bath water, because he also likes to drink the bath water, and that's a bad combination. But we're learning, and it's going well, and it is being reinforced at daycare. So that's we've talked in the past about daycare and should you or should you not do it. Obviously, it's everyone's choice, but one benefit to it is that they'll reinforce what you're doing to train your kids at home. They'll reinforce that at daycare, usually at the same time that you're doing it. So potty training is something that they do multiple times a day. I think every couple of hours they sit all the kids down one after the other on the potty and just wait and see what happens.
Nice.
Most of the time nothing happens, but at least they know and they're getting more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So that's what's been going on with us in the Brooks household. So on to this week's topic, health. We visited this topic in a previous episode. If you go back and look for the science of the dad bod, we talk about what happens to men's bodies as we age, especially once we have kids, and the difference between men who have kids and men who don't, and how their bodies kind of change differently over time. And a year has passed since then, and Brandon and I are 1 year closer to, being full-on adults. We're dads, we're adults, but we kind of, in the late 20s, you still feel like a kid a little bit, but every year you feel less like a kid, especially once your body starts to react differently. So we wanted to revisit this and see how things are going, how our bodies have been changing, and what we're doing to kind of counteract the cruel hand of time. So Brandon, what has been going on with you recently? I know you told me that you recently had a physical, right?
Yeah, so this is purely coincidence, but I'm really fortunate that we just happened to have picked talking about this topic today.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to start off by just trying to draw in everyone's attention and remind everyone to go get your yearly checkup or physical. For the guys, we don't typically go into a doctor as regularly as women, and it's nothing about anything other than just there's different things going on for each gender. But, sometimes you may not feel like you need to. Or with men especially, we feel strong and fit and you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
If you don't have insurance or if there's some reason preventing you, that's maybe one thing. I would still highly encourage you to figure out the best way to do something. But it's been very important. Or it is very important, and I just want to share with everyone. I got my yearly physical. I did it last week, actually, before we record this episode. And some of the numbers actually came back, and there were some concerns that came up. And in particular, something that I kind of always been dealing with a little bit, and I say always, even though I'm 29, but cholesterol is something that's always kind of been a topic for me to keep track of. I don't eat very well, and I try to do better, but I love fried foods.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you live in the South,
so you're always struggling with it, and it's something you always got to keep your eye on. But so that was kind of what I expected to get. Didn't really expect much. It's kind of like your dentist. You're like, yeah, floss more, and then you go to the doctor, and it's like, yeah, don't eat as badly.
Yeah, thanks for the wisdom, doc.
Yeah, exactly, and you kind of go about your day, but this time was different. I got some numbers that were a lot lower on different types of things like blood cell counts that were very concerning.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's important, guys, is because I'm just walking around. I'm just normal. I was healthy. I'm 29. Everything's going good.
You look healthy.
I thank you. I know I eat fried foods, and that's always going to be my weakness. But nobody was ever going to prepare you for having low blood cell counts, and that is, some serious stuff. You got to be really worried about that. And the only way I would have known it is because I went in for my yearly physical.
Right.
So I'm just going to encourage everyone to just get the due diligence done. I mean, it's not a lot of work. The one thing I will say is that, I kind of need to figure this one out with my doctor and kind of figure out what was going on here. But like, I didn't get, say, like a yearly reminder to go. And that's another thing that I think is probably an issue for folks is they just kind of forget.
I mean, we have kids.
Yeah,
our minds
exactly.
are on other things. They're not on ourselves.
Right. You just kind of forget. So if your doctor's office doesn't like set you up every year with an appointment, like you need to go and figure this out immediately. And I don't want to scare everybody, but like do me a personal favor.
Yeah.
After what I'm kind of going through right now, and things are still kind of up in the air. I got to do some more. We're doing some more tests to try to figure out what's going on. And because, like I said, it's unusual. Like you're just totally healthy, and then someone tells you that maybe you're not, quite up to snuff on certain things, and everyone's kind of confused by that, and rightfully so. Like how can you be healthy and then maybe you're not?
Yeah.
And you're just walking around and everything's fine. And Jesse can vouch. I look the same.
Yeah.
Everything's going A-okay. But it's something you got to be on top of, and I wouldn't have known if I didn't get checked up. So Jesse, get checked up. Have you gone to a physical this year?
I actually have.
Thank you. Good. You're okay.
Yeah, I went. I think it must have been 3 or 4 weeks ago now. I went in for a physical, and it was my first one since I want to say spring 2017. So it had been a couple
Jesse,
of years.
Come on.
Yeah, but hey,
don't be like Jesse, guys. Let's go.
So I went in and I got tested, and for the most part, everything was fine. But one thing that my doctor highlighted for me that had not been on my mind recently was that a few years back, I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. It was something that was never a problem for me as a kid, although looking back, there are signs. But as an adult, I was having a lot of trouble focusing at work and at home too, and was generally forgetful. And in 2016, I talked to a doctor, and they gave me that diagnosis and gave me basically a low dose of Adderall. And I took it for a while, thought I didn't need it anymore, thought it was too expensive because I was on a different insurance plan at the time, and then went off it for a couple of years. And then slowly those signs started to creep back up. My wife started to notice that I was having trouble focusing, that I wasn't remembering details in our conversations, things like that. So when I went back in for my physical, I mentioned that, and they said, well, this is kind of obvious, but it's your ADD. Why don't you go back on your medication?
Yeah.
And if it's, too expensive, there are discounts and stuff. And it turns out I have better insurance anyway. So it was super cheap for me. Thank God.
There you go.
And over the past few days, I've gone back on that and I've already noticed a benefit. I'm able to focus. I don't feel anxious at work if I can't remember things, because I'm able to pay attention. So that was the takeaway for me. It was something I already knew, but, thanks to, call it, pride, whatever you want to call it, I thought, oh, well, this isn't a problem for me. And I think that's something that happens to a lot of dudes. You know, I mean, as men, of course, we have insecurities that we just don't like to talk or think about, but there's a lot of pride involved. There's a little bit of ego that creeps in that says, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I don't need help. I don't need, this or that medication. I'm just going to, soldier on and be strong, and that's fine. But as you get older, your body starts to tell you, that's not fine. That's actually dumb. So I learned that, and I'm making changes. And one other thing I'm doing is increasing exercise.
Yeah.
This was something that was, I exercised pretty regularly in my early 20s, and then, around my mid 20s, and especially once we had David, I just basically stopped completely.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't really doing anything physical to kind of keep up my fitness. And recently, my wife and I joined a gym. It was her idea because I probably never would have done it. And we've started going about twice a week. And it's not easy. I do it in the mornings before work. So I do like 5 a.m. gym classes, which it's rough. But once you start doing it, it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And they're like cardio classes. And there's a lot of bike stuff and rower stuff. And then, stuff with like sandbags and stuff like that. So it's not, I'm not going in and bench pressing and doing heavy weightlifting and bodybuilding. But it's just stuff to kind of keep my body moving and, burn some calories and things like that. And I've noticed some benefits from that as well. I've lost a couple pounds. And I'm not someone who's super overweight, but I haven't been at at the ideal healthy weight in a couple of years. So that has kind of had some benefits as well, and we were talking about exercise before the podcast, and Brandon, I like kind of your take on it, kind of where it's once you're a parent, it's hard to find the time. What are you struggling with there?
Yeah, I think I struggle with everything that you kind of talked about and what I imagine most people talk about. How do you find the time? And I definitely know several years ago, like you said, when I was kind of exercising regularly, the benefits and how great it felt, and it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have the kid, everything gets a lot harder just because, not even just because of the reasons of the time, but also just the guilt that comes along with doing other things for yourself. And so that's the biggest challenge is it's like, I don't want to, I go to work and then I come home and I can't go exercise after work because I need to be home.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be with my family and hanging out with my son.
Mm-hmm.
And so it always kind of felt like I don't really have the time to do it.
Yeah.
And this is definitely not the time in my son's life where I want to be starting to check back out again,
Mm-hmm.
once or twice a week even, still doesn't feel like much. When you only get 2 hours a night
Right.
on the weeknights, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, it's a time crunch. It's
Mhm.
really hard, and it feels really stressful to try to take away that time because there's only so much of it
Yeah.
during the week. And then somewhat like what you talked about, trying to go early in the morning, that's kind of what we've been trying to figure out. Do I go early in the morning? Do I go in the afternoon?
Mhm.
We've tried doing the evening stuff, which I think can work well. The way it basically shakes out is kind of the opposite of what you suggested, Jesse, where, I'll go to work, I'll come home, we'll do the kid time, we'll put him to bed, and then one of us stays because he's still asleep at home, and then one of us will go work out in the evenings because we're really not using that time in the evening. And then what I always kind of told myself is, well, that's my time.
Mhm.
I need to have that to relax, to kick back, to just sit on the couch and veg and enjoy. This is what I've earned. I've earned this time off. Work is hard. Parenting is hard. I need to relax.
Yeah.
And when you're putting your kid to sleep, that's all you're looking forward to is just sitting down and doing nothing.
Yeah.
But if we're being honest, there's several hours there to deal with. My son still goes to bed at like 7.
Nice.
And if I go to bed at like 10:30, there's 3 hours there
Yeah.
to play with. Like if you're just doing the math on it, there's plenty of time to sneak in a workout.
Yeah.
And it actually feels, as I've tried to do it, it feels more productive. Feel a more productive use of that time.
Yeah.
Because, some nights will just be like, what do you want to do? I don't know, nothing. What do you want to do? Nothing. And then you just watch Netflix for 3 hours.
Yeah. And
Which
go to
can
bed.
be fine.
Yeah.
It works really well when you got something to binge. But once you binge through that and then you need to start a new show, it's really hard to start a new show. So that you might as well work out.
Might as well.
You might as
yeah.
well do something. So we've been trying to do that. Where like, kind of every other night we just kind of rotate like who goes to do, yoga or something like that, and exercise. So that's my best advice. Now, I do want to be real clear about something. We suck at doing this.
Uh-huh.
We're not good yet.
Yeah.
We're not on a schedule. So cut yourself some slack because it's going to be really hard early on, and you're probably going to suck at it.
Yeah.
We're still trying to be regular with it, and trying to get it done like twice a week, which is not enough even, but it's just really hard to squeeze it in and go and commit, especially when it's like, okay, the class is at 7 o'clock. If you like doing class type things, which like I kind of know about myself, I need to do a kind of a class thing because I like being a part of the group. Where like you get to do your own thing, but like as a unit and you're being told what to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to work out well at all if I'm not told what to do.
Yeah.
And how to work out
Because
very
you're
well.
your own boss and you're like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm going to give you the rest of the day
I'm
off.
just gonna, I'll just be like, I'm just gonna hop on that treadmill with the TV and I'm just gonna chill there and just kind of jog. And whenever I feel like taking a break, I'll take a break.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of layers to this, but try to figure out some kind of a construct. So I think the biggest thing first is, can you do it early or late? If you want to work around the kids' schedule, and I highly recommend working around the kids' schedule. Like, don't sacrifice there. That's going to make you feel even worse.
Yeah.
So try to go early or late. Try to figure out what can work. Trade off between you and your partner.
Yeah.
That seems like a good recipe for success. And then figure out what you like doing exercise-wise, if we just want to talk exercise.
Yeah.
Because you may struggle because you would prefer doing it in a class and you just don't know it, and you might find it intimidating. And I did find it intimidating to join like a class or something.
Me too.
But like no one cares.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
best.
that's the
the
thing.
best news I can share with you is that in a class, no one cares.
Yeah.
Like it's actually wonderful because it is still independent. No one's watching really
Yeah.
what you're doing.
No one's talking to each other.
There's no talking. Like everyone's just there to get stuff done and focus on them, and everyone's just trying to do the thing. So you kind of get the good group vibe of like, oh, we're all in this together.
And you've
But,
got a
like,
coach kind of cracking the whip too.
Yeah, the coach is kind of maybe telling you what to do, but
Yeah.
he's also not just like sitting getting behind you and harping on you like your high school football coach, being
Yeah.
like, I can't believe it, Brooks, pick up the slack. Like,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
they're just happy you're there.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
cut
paying them
yourself,
too, so.
yeah, like cut yourself some slack. So I don't know, that's kind of worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jesse, have you found any kind of exercise styles that you enjoy?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a similar format where it's a class-based thing. We do 2 classes a week. It's not free form. You go in for an hour, you do like half an hour cardio on the bike, and then half an hour like lifting, hand weights and doing strap exercises and things like that. And it's kind of high intensity, but you do what you want to with it. You can do like low, medium, or high intensity. But it is coach led, so you've got someone who is telling you what to do and when and for how long. So, it's a little harder to just kind of give up. But then also they're encouraging you the whole time. Like, every once in a while, hey, Jesse, great job. Hey, John, good job, that kind of thing. And it's something that I was resistant to it at first. When we did our first class, I was like, I kind of hate this. And then my wife was like, we're just going to sign up anyway, suck it up. Yep. And then we did. And over the past few weeks, I've really grown to kind of like it. And I kind of want to start going more often now. Now, also like you and Austin, we're also not great at it yet. We've been going for 4 weeks. We've both missed a week here or there just because things happen. Like I got kind of sick and I didn't want to bring my germs in. And then, I had to work early or I had to work late. So, but it's something that I've learned that consistency helps. And once you start doing it consistently after a couple of weeks, it just becomes part of your routine. And it's something that I never thought I'd have time to do. Now, what I do is I get up early in the morning and do it. But that's just because I am an early bird. Like, I have to get up early anyway because I go into work so that I can get home in the afternoon and pick up my son from daycare because my wife handles the drop-offs in the morning. So she does her evening workouts. I do my morning workouts. They're both during time where we're not with the baby. Yeah. So hers are usually before David's pickup time, and the mine are before anyone is awake.
There you go.
So that's, you find that balance with your partner because you can't both be gone at the same time unless you've got a third person in the house watching the baby. So I know that that's one of the stumbling blocks, sometimes for people, but figure out how to stagger it. If a gym thing just isn't for you, might I suggest morning walks and runs. That's something I did for a long time. And, the difficulty there is because, again, you're your own coach in that situation. It's really easy to kind of let off the gas or even take a day off here and there because no one is holding you accountable. So that's something I found is that the older I get, the more accountable I need to be. So that's kind of where I am with exercise. It's not perfect. I probably need to be doing more of it, but I'm doing more than I was, even a month ago. So I think it's a great place to start. Now, the other thing that I've got a lot of work to do on is nutrition. This is something where, you touched on this earlier with the fried food. That's a problem for me too. My real problem is salts and sugars.
Oh, yeah.
I'm starting to learn that the older I get, my metabolism is not what it was when I was 18.
Yeah.
So, I used to eat, a sleeve of Chip Ahoys and then, not gain any weight. That doesn't happen anymore. So what I'm learning is that I'm learning to cut out sugars. And it's not perfect. I didn't just swear them off and I haven't eaten them since. I will have a soda now and then. But over the past few months, I've started to make different choices. Like if I'm walking up to the soda machine, instead I'll just go fill up my water bottle. Or if I'm going up to the vending machine, instead of getting a cookie, I'll get like a mixed fruit cup or something like that. Yeah. And, you don't enjoy it as much. Like, I'm not going to lie, you don't get the fun of having the sweet dessert or, the fried food. It doesn't feel like an indulgence or comfort food. But you also don't feel as crappy afterwards because, the older we get, you start to crash after you have sugars and fatty foods. Like you start to feel like miserable, like, oh my God, why did I eat that? You don't get that when you eat healthier. And it's not perfect. I've still got a long way to go. We tried different things. We tried sort of an intermittent fasting, and now we're kind of adjusting that a little bit because, we've just kind of figured out that it hasn't worked for us. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. And we're just kind of testing different things out. And I think now is the time, if you're our age, we're in our late 20s. Brandon, you're not 30 yet, are you?
No, 29.
Yeah, 29. Yeah. You're same as me. So we're kind of, if you're in that zone, like now is the time to start figuring out what works for you nutritionally and with exercise too. So you mentioned that your cholesterol levels historically have been high. Yeah. So kind of what's the goal for you nutrition-wise?
Oh boy. I mean, this is the tough part, guys. Like you can kind of carry on and kind of keep doing what you're doing, and you can be like, oh, it's high, but that's just me, and I know that's me. So I haven't changed anything yet, even though I know that my cholesterol is a problem. I need to kind of figure it out. The solution for me, I know, is just cooking. When I don't cook, you go to Chick-fil-A.
Exactly.
So, anytime I'm going to go out, for a quick dinner or something on a weeknight, it's got to be quick, first of all, because you're tired and you don't want to do anything. And it's easier than cooking in your mind.
Yeah.
So trying to get back with cooking again, just because if you're going to cook, you're probably not cooking up some fried foods, most likely. And I like other foods that are good for you, and that's fine. Like, I've greatly increased my appreciation and enjoyment of various vegetables and things. Like, it's just a matter of, like, I got to go do it.
Yeah.
And prepare for it. I think I've mentioned before that, like, we did Blue Apron for a long time.
Yeah.
Those, like, meal delivery services are a lot of fun and really good and generally good for you. It doesn't cut out anything. It's not diet-based. Blue Apron is not. Other such services can be diet-based, but, it focuses on, like, smaller portions.
Yeah.
And then you don't have leftovers of things that are bad for you, and then you're eating the bad over and over again. And then, it still tastes good, but you do have to cook it. So there's things you got to always work through. And it's especially challenging combining the nutrition problem with the exercise problem, because now I'm talking about taking an hour out of my evening to go work out. And then that's an hour I'm not home to cook.
Yeah.
So it makes things even harder
I know.
to kind of figure out. So the struggle's real. But the best way I can think of kind of wrapping this portion of the conversation up is just like do the best you can to be on top of what's going on with you. Get the checkup like we talked about.
Yeah.
Because, we mentioned like, oh, we're not even 30 yet. Oh, we're 29 and we got to be prepared. And that can sound like lip service, but, you guys obviously heard what's going on with me. I mean, you got to be really careful, and that one's not exercise or nutrition related, but the cholesterol is. And, my doctor didn't, scare me about it, but she basically told me, if this is the same when we check in again next year, like, we're going to have to start talking about medication.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine, you're probably not imagining that you're 30 and you're going to be on your cholesterol medication.
Seriously.
But, I mean, you got 50, 60 years ahead of you. Like, you cannot get behind the curve.
Yeah.
On something that can develop into a long-term problem. Like, better get ahead of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not like looking forward to being on medication by any chance, but at least like we're on top of things and we're talking about it, and we're not waiting until like down the road to figure out what's going to go on. So just be on top of your stuff.
And then one other thing I want to touch on, I'll do this briefly, is stress management. I think that stress is something that, especially as guys, we feel stress and we feel stressed out, but we don't really think about what can I do to relieve stress other than just get the things done that are making me stressed out.
Yeah.
But I've learned over the years kind of what to do to manage stress. I learned it the hard way because in 2016, I was working a really stressful job, a different job than I have now. And I went one day to donate blood with the Red Cross, and they denied me because my blood pressure was too high.
Wow.
It was super high, like hypertension.
Yeah.
And they said, you've got to go home and like just decompress or something and then come back. And I eventually started monitoring my blood pressure. I found that it was pretty darn high. And when I went in for my 2017 physical, at first they recommended medication for it.
Wow.
And I said, I don't want to do that just because of my family history. My dad had high blood pressure as well. It's probably where I got it. And he kind of had just negative experiences with his medication. It caused other problems. So I said, well, what else can I do to manage it? And they said, well, you need to lose weight. At the time, I was about 15 to 20 pounds heavier than I am now.
Yeah.
And they said, lose some weight, lose what's stressing you out. So I quit that job. And immediately my stress levels kind of decreased. And I had other, other stressors in my life as well. But as my stress decreased, and over time, as my kind of nutrition and exercise habits, changed a little bit, lost a little bit of weight, the blood pressure came down. But at age 26, 27 that I was at the time, I wasn't thinking about my blood pressure. If you are in that stage, your late 20s, maybe even your early 30s, you're probably not thinking about it either. But as people get older, I think this is men especially, but it definitely happens with women too.
Yeah.
Your blood pressure can become an issue. especially if you're gaining weight, your body's changing. That's something that you might not be thinking about, but you really need to think about, because high blood pressure can cause a hell of a lot of problems in your life. So I brought it under control when I came in for my physical a few weeks ago. It was back down to normal levels, which was really great.
Awesome.
But it's something that I have to keep on my mind. If I'm feeling tense, if I'm getting headaches, if I'm gaining weight, is my blood pressure going up? You can get a blood pressure monitor from the store. I think you can buy one at Target for like $20.
Okay.
And they're really easy to use. And there's also the free blood pressure monitors in some grocery stores in the United States. Like Publix here in the South, there's always a little stand next to the pharmacy where you can stick your arm in there and get your blood pressure
or
reading.
like a CVS or something like that.
Exactly. And there's apps that can help track those things. Some other things I do to kind of reduce stress lately is I've kind of gotten into meditation, and it's not some mystical religious, Eastern spirituality kind of thing. But there are scientific techniques for breathing techniques to help regulate kind of your stress levels and help you focus more clearly. And I do this a little bit in the morning and a little bit in the afternoon. And I'm not perfect at it because you're supposed to be able to kind of clear your mind and focus on your breathing or sounds that you hear or things like that. And it's supposed to help you kind of focus on being mindful in the present so that you're not anxious, about the future. But I always catch myself thinking about other things.
Oh, yeah.
But then again, that goes back to the ADD I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. So, there's just things as you get older that you can do. And now that we're at that age, it's the perfect time to start doing them. So just, I guess what we're saying is find what works for you. But I mean, for the love of God, do something.
Yeah.
You can't afford to just coast anymore, guys.
Yeah, you got to pay attention. And, especially when you talk about stress, like for me, it kind of comes back to this thought of like, I'm fine, I'm healthy, I can work through it.
Yeah.
You're probably not even thinking that deeply about it because then you'd be admitting that you think there might be something wrong.
Yeah.
And most likely you're just kind of working through it and you're just like, oh, my job is just stressful. Well, that's me, and that's you, and that's most people.
Yeah, I mean,
like who's going to say like, oh, my job is no stress?
Yeah.
Like not many people,
No
right?
one.
Even if you really enjoy your job, it's probably stressful because
Yeah.
you're like working really hard because you're enjoying it. So don't ignore that facet. Talk to somebody about it. And the thing for me that, I wouldn't want anyone to be doing, consciously or not, is just being like, oh, I'm strong, I'm tough, I can work through it. Like, what's strong about being told you have possibly hypertension?
Yeah.
What's strong about stressing yourself so much that you end up in the hospital? Like, I know people this has happened to. Like, what's strong about that? That's a stupid idea. Don't play around with that. Don't play with fire. There's nothing that you have to do as a man to be like, oh, I just deal with it because I'm just good and I'm strong like that. You're just going to end up in a bad situation, and no one's going to look at you and be like, oh, he was a tough guy. He toughed it out until he crapped out at 45.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants that for you. So don't get caught up in anything like that. And just be true about what's going on. I mean, the easiest thing to do is just to go in for a visit with your doctor and just kind of lay some things out there. The easiest thing, and what always kind of feels odd to me, is just talking about the stuff.
Yeah.
And bringing it up when no one is expecting you to bring it up. But if you just sit in that doctor's office and be like, I've kind of feel like I've had a lot of extra stress, and I'm a little worried about my blood pressure, or I'm a little worried about blah 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 XYZ. Like, honestly, when I've kind of talked about a thing or so like that with my doctor, a lot of times they'll just very quickly and honestly, and as doctors do, in like 30 seconds, tell you it's not a problem.
Yeah.
They are not afraid to just cut to it because they're busy too. They're working. They're trying to get to the next patient probably, but like they can easily allay a fear and just kind of tell you like, oh, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
Or they will double check the number and tell you based off of your results, no, it's fine. Like I, kind of worried about, not so much just the cholesterol, but like you worry about your family history, and you might
definitely
be like, oh, okay, something's been going on, and my mother has this, or my grandmother has that, or my grandparents had that, and you may not think about it because you're young. And then for me, the first time I ever really brought it up was maybe this year or the prior year of my physical, and I was like, my such and such family member had this thing. Do I need to worry about it?
Yeah.
And they can just look at the tests and the results and the blood work and just be like, no, like you're at a low risk for this. Obviously they'll keep an eye on it because you flagged it for them, but like they might never have mentioned it to you.
Yeah.
And they could just very simply say like, you're fine, you're doing great. You're actually at a low risk for this.
Yeah.
And then like that just feels way better than just being like, I wonder if I'll ever have to deal with it. Just get it out there up front and just kind of be on top of it.
Or even if there is a problem, like there's there's never going to be a better time to bring it up. There's only just going to be a worse time. Like, you might think that, okay, if I just ignore this and try and live my life, these problems will go away on their own. They're not going to go away on their own. It's like closing the door if the room is on fire. It's going to stay on fire, and eventually it's going to burst through that door. So they may tell you nothing's wrong. They may say, oh, you know what, this is kind of worrisome, but you're early enough now to where if we put a plan together and start doing something about it, it's not going to be a problem for you later on. So I think that that's just the bottom line here, is that, now is the time to start focusing on your health. Now is the time to start wondering and asking the questions, so that you can get the answers and kind of put a plan together. And I know that there are hurdles. I know that you feel as a parent that you don't have time to do this. You don't have time to make a doctor's appointment, to sign up for a gym. But eventually you make the time and you figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't impact your parenting style, or even if it does, it just does it a little bit, and you get used to it, and it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. So really that's just kind of, it's something that you're going to have to get over, and you will, and it'll get better.
And here you go, guys. Don't be a baby.
Don't be a baby
about it.
You've got babies.
We don't
be a
want to
baby.
keep yelling about this to you guys, so go get it done. Don't be a baby.
So a couple days ago, we actually posed this question out to our followers. What are you doing as you're getting older to take care of your health? We posted this on our Facebook page, on Dadsplaining, a fatherhood group, the Facebook group that we have. Go check it out, as well as on our Instagram account. And we've gotten some really interesting responses, and I wanted to kind of share them because there's some really cool tips in there and some things that we didn't think about. So Brandon, what have people been posting on our page?
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at the Facebook page first. Got a comment from our buddy Aaron. Shout out to you. If you guys haven't been listening all along, first of all, what are you doing? Start listening to all of our episodes. So we did an interview with Aaron a while back, but he mentioned that he's working on his cholesterol as well. Really wants to reduce his intake. What's been working for him has been reducing his meats and mostly eliminating eggs. So kind of when it comes to the dietary stuff, I would just say kind of figure out what's best for you guys, but that's what's working for Aaron. So props to you, man, for keeping tabs on the cholesterol. That's something that I definitely need a life lesson in to kind of do my best work. And then some comments on today's episode, live here, happening as we go. My buddy AJ, shout out to AJ, says he stays healthy by being on the bike. He likes biking. We've got this cool thing called the Beltline here in Atlanta, kind of goes around the city. He loves biking on that. That's fantastic. And then we also got Jerry.
That's my aunt. Hey, Aunt
okay.
Jerry.
Hey, there you go. Who says that journaling your day, keeping an eye on what's going on, keep your phones closed as much as you can, or if you're going to use that phone, find an app that helps keep you accountable. Jesse kind of referenced. There's a lot of good material out there, whether it's meditation, whether it's health tracking, whether it's diet tracking, and then just kind of doing things in small increments was also Jerry's advice, so that you can kind of enjoy what you're doing instead of hating it. So if you want to nibble on that ice cream, you want to nibble on that fried food, make it the treat, where it's like, cool, this is my, some people do the cheat days or whatever it is, and maybe that works out for you. So thank you, Jerry, AJ, and Aaron for commenting.
Yeah, I want to second that thing that my Aunt Jerry said about journaling. It's something that I do. I try and do it pretty regularly. Brandon, I think you've mentioned before that you keep a journal kind of semi-regularly.
Yeah.
It's really good for being reflective and being mindful and kind of being able to kind of cherry pick the good things out of a day. A lot of people do things that they call like a gratitude list, like every day, like what am I grateful for? What am I thankful for? And that's really good for stress reduction. If you wake up and you're already anxious about going to work, try opening up a journal and saying, okay, I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful that I have a good job. Things like that to kind of keep your mind in a positive space. I'm not saying that positive thinking is going to change your entire life, but it is a good way to kind of change your mindset and get you in focused less on the stress, which is going to spike your blood pressure, like we've been talking about, and more on kind of a motivational mood where you can get into the gym if you're feeling good about it. We also got a couple of great comments on our Instagram page. Torben in Germany, our listener, says, I try to go to the gym twice a week. Yeah, it's like what we've been saying, get in the gym.
It's not a crazy goal. It's manageable.
Yeah, it's easy. And some of them are affordable too. Like there are some that are expensive, sure. But there are some, and there's different tiers, you just go on the lowest tier if you can't afford the highest tier and take, one class a week or whatever it is for you. Anything is better than nothing. Yep. Also, I think Robert says, I'm cycling and doing volunteer work involving manual labor to keep physically healthy. I think
Hey.
that's really cool.
Nice combo there with giving back and being healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, volunteering is something that is really helpful. I don't really do that much.
I'm not going to pretend that I do either, but it sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. I have no problem with that. I think it's great. And then our listener, oh gosh, let me remember Nick. Nick, who lives in Queensland, Australia, says, I try and surf every day. And hey, if you live on the Gold Coast, man, if you're in Australia or California or one of those places where you can surf, I've heard that it is very beneficial in a lot of ways.
Is that just a tip or a humble brag? I'm not really sure. Surfing every day. Got it. I'm going to put that on my list.
Right. And then we got also, let's see, Kevin McCoy says, get a yearly physical, like we just said.
There you go.
Exercise, get more sleep. That's something I didn't talk about. I don't get nearly enough sleep, although I've been trying to get more lately. You mentioned the other day that for a while when Noah was sleeping, you got, 7 to 8 hours a night?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, that's amazing. I'm so jealous. I don't do that. I'm just not in the habit of it. I average 6.5 hours on a good night.
Yeah.
On a bad night, it's less than 6. And that is, that's bad for my blood pressure. That's bad for my health, for my focus. And it's also dangerous if you're driving on the road while you're tired. So yeah, get more sleep
Be better than Jesse. That's what we're talking about today.
Exactly. It's an exceptional tip. Now, we also posted this question to our group members on Dadsplaining, a Fatherhood group. Brandon, do you have those?
Absolutely. So yes, join us on Facebook. We've got the page. We've also got the group. We get a little more conversation going on some of these issues. Javier, longtime listener, shout out to you, buddy. Says he works in tourism, so he never stops walking. So that's really helpful if you have a job that just happens to help you out on that. That's great. He's been working on a vegetarian diet. And then something I think interesting, he mentions having, 1 cigarette a day and a beer every 3 days. So what's interesting about that is you're admitting that you're doing some of the things that can be problematic, but you have kind of a system that's working for you. So you're not totally cutting yourself off cold turkey, but you're keeping everything kind of in moderation. We had Jerry kind of mention that as well. So, I think it's just a good approach that, Javier kind of admits, I'm not doing much, but you have some little things going on there that are kind of helping you get through it.
Yeah, although Javier, I would say as someone who has had family members who have smoked, and you already know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but try and cut out that cigarette if you can. I think you'll feel a lot better in the long term. Love you, buddy.
Yeah. And then Alan commented that he and his wife are both nurses, so that's obviously a kind of a physically demanding job, so that's very helpful. That works out, but you got to work on controlling your stress levels and staying, heart healthy. So even if your job is physical, that still could cause you some challenges. Like if you're stressing your body every day by working, that can be something you got to keep an eye on. Something that I found really interesting, and we kind of commented and joked about this on our group page, is that Alan says he's allergic to alcohol, so that takes it off the table for him.
There you go.
And I think that's hysterical.
That's a freebie.
I haven't really heard about that too often from people, so that's what a great way to stay out of it. Just don't be allergic, or be allergic. Sorry, just don't be able to have it.
Yeah.
And then doesn't smoke. So things that he needs to work on is basically that he's not really has a diet plan and kind of figuring it out. So I love the honesty from everyone that we're just kind of pointing out we're not really doing much about it for most people. And then Chris, another guy who commented as well, is saying that he kind of has always been the athlete or an active person, always training and competing. But he's 41 now, and he finds it important more so than ever to continue doing those things. So if you were doing it when you were younger and then you kind of slack off and you kind of stop doing it and you stop being active and you have kids and you do all those things and you think that's keeping me active and young, yes and no. And so, Chris kind of pointing out that he really needs to stay back on top of being active and being physical. He always enjoyed doing it in the past. He needs to keep doing it. So he mentions he does rock climbing, mountain biking, strength and conditioning 2 to 3 times a week. So, he's got a good routine is what it sounds like. And he just kind of acknowledged it, he was maybe slacking off a little bit in those middle years. And he kind of needed to get back to being active again.
That's awesome. So I also simultaneously I posed this question to my personal Facebook friends, and I got a lot of great tips. Ryan Campbell, who was on our podcast several episodes back, look for that episode, Be Available. He told his dad's story. He said he takes multivitamins, a Joe Rogan smoothie 3 times a week. I guess that's a smoothie that Joe Rogan sells. ACV every morning, which I looked this up, and let's see, ACV. I already forgot what it is, so I'm going to Google it. and apple cider vinegar. That's right.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
He's
he takes
so
apple
into
cider vinegar.
the vinegar scene that we got acronyms.
Yeah, exactly. But that is something that's pretty popular. We did. My wife and I did that for a while. Right after we got married, it was just too disgusting to keep up, we couldn't do it. But he does 3 days in the gym, and then balances that with 3 days running outside, and gets plenty of sleep and 1 day of yoga a week, which is you mentioned recently that you've started trying hot yoga, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I've been trying it out. So it's something that my wife enjoyed doing, hot yoga. You've probably heard people talk about it. It's been kind of the fad for a few years now going, and so you probably roll your eyes at it. What I found is that I actually enjoy it. And I would have never thought it. So I just want to give you a quick thing to dispel your concern. Like you hear hot yoga and you're like, why would I want to go into a hot room? It's bad enough that I'm doing yoga, but now I have to be hot.
With a bunch of sweaty people.
And it's not just, you don't go in there and like the opposite of the air conditioning where the heat's just blasting wave after wave on top of you and you're just like in a never-ending sauna where like it's currently consistently blasting you. It's actually much nicer. Yes, the heat is on, but there are fans. There's some circulation of the air. You're not just sitting in like a dead heat. As if you were in Georgia outside. And so it's actually kind of enjoyable because there's some circulation, and that's the kind of thing that I was worried about, is that it would just be like stale and dead and just totally hot in there. And yes, it's warm, but like you actually get used to it very quickly in a few minutes, and you don't really focus on it, and it feels just like any other kind of a gym or workout environment. And then the benefit I found is that yoga is great for flexibility. It's great for just kind of stretching and doing those kinds of things that you don't maybe get done at the gym. The hot version for me, though, I found enjoyable because it does kind of give you that workout feel, even though you're not running and lifting weights, because you're actively hot and sweating a lot more. And so that can kind of be a nice feeling, actually, because you'll walk away from hot yoga feeling like you got a workout in because you did that extra effort of being hot and kind of getting the sweat going on. It actually feels kind of good.
That's awesome. I might look into that myself. We got a few other comments. Michael says, less alcohol, yoga, again.
There you go.
Spending more time with family, and giving fewer, I'll just say F's because this is a family podcast, what other people think of me. That's important. Like, try and let go of that insecurity of what are other people going to think if I do this or that or the other, and just live your life. I love that. Lee says, keto diet and stop smoking. Good for you, man. Soldier on. Good luck with with quitting smoking. I know it can be tough. Joel says, riding my bike as often as possible. Joel's a coworker of mine. I see him ride his bike into work some days, which, I mean, I live 45 minutes away, on the highway, so I can't do that.
Like a
power
3-hour bike.
I would. I'd be a day late to work every day. Scott says, DDPY, which I looked this up. This is Diamond Dallas Page Yoga. If that name sounds familiar, Diamond Dallas Page was a pro wrestler in the United States in I want to say the 80s and 90s.
He has
maybe.
His own yoga?
Yes, he has gotten into the yoga business lately. I've heard about this, and it's very popular.
Wow.
So, if you think that yoga is just some flimsy, wishy-washy thing that little girly men do or whatever, no, Diamond Dallas Page does it. So, it
will kick your butt. I can
exactly.
Tell you.
He also says smaller portions, hydrating, and multivitamins. Brittany says, so we got some comments also from non-dads. Brittany says self-care like yoga, again. She also threw in massages and facials, which, again, we feel the guilt if we do self-care things like that. But, it's good every once in a while. I get a massage once a year, maybe. It's probably not enough because my muscles are really tense. Anne says she was someone who used to not take care of herself and suffered serious health consequences. She says she's switching more to organic meat, fruit, and more vegetables. And she limits dairy. She tries not to have sugar more than twice a week. Things like that. Little things you can do to alter your diet, I think is really important. I got a couple of sarcastic comments that I'm going to skip right past. Melissa says the alkaline diet, which is something I'm not familiar with, so I'd have to look into. And then my friend Aaron brought up a really important point that's something that we haven't been talking about, that there's a stigma around mental health. So some might be hesitant to mention this, but therapy, there's no shame in getting help when you need it. I think that's super huge. I think that people's perceptions around mental health are starting to change in this generation. We're starting to see things like depression and anxiety and just general mental health problems as something that you shouldn't be ashamed about, but something that is a legitimate healthcare thing. So, I see no problem in going to see a therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist. When I got my ADD diagnosis, it was with a behavioral health specialist, which is kind of in that same vein. So, guys, as you get older, pay attention to your health for sure, but also how you're feeling, mentally. Do you feel down? Do you feel depressed sometimes? Are there, things going on in your life that you should talk to someone about? There's nothing wrong with talking to people about that. So, Aaron, I thought that was a really great tip. So that about does it for this week's episode of Dadsplaining. I really enjoyed this. There were actually some things that we talked about that I brought up that I haven't really been open about, sometimes. So it's nice to kind of get stuff like that out there in the open and talk about it. So Brandon, in between this week and next week, if our listeners want to reach out to us, where can they find us?
Yeah, join in the conversation. We actually had a really great chat with a lot of the listeners about health today. I mean, it's on everyone's minds, which is great. You can join in on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. Please give us a like or a follow there. You can also email us directly if you want to, dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. And then we drop this and every episode every week, and you can catch that anywhere you get your podcasts.
That's right. And if you are listening on a platform like iTunes or Apple Podcasts that allows you to leave ratings and reviews, please leave us a rating and a review. We know that we've got a growing listener base. I've seen that we have maybe 220 Spotify subscribers now. On the app Castbox, we have over 60. Some apps don't tell us how many we have, but we know that you guys are out there. Like, we know that you're listening. We appreciate you. We love you. And we would love to hear from you. Feedback, positive, negative. Reviews, they let us know how we're doing, but they also kind of suggest to iTunes that, hey, this podcast is popular. Let's boost it and share it with more people. So that's what you could do to kind of help us if we're helping you. Now, Brandon, what are we talking about next week?
So today's episode was kind of a good look back. We did the episode a while ago about the dad bod, and then we talked again about health today. So it kind of sparked this idea that I feel like we want to go back and give it a look at some of the topics we've covered in the past and just kind of revisit how we're doing. We try to give some advice, and if we don't have advice to give, we just kind of give our general thoughts and opinions, but we mostly just want to talk about different things that might be on your minds. And I will freely admit, like we did today on the health episode, some of the things that we've probably recommended, we're probably not doing a very good job of it.
Yeah.
So we want to check in with how are we doing on sleep training and feedings and eating and diets and, other things that are going on with our kids, and, how do Jesse and I actually stack up at following Jesse and I's own advice.
That's right. So until next time, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And this week's dad joke comes from the Dad Jokes subreddit on reddit.com. Why are mountains funny, Brandon?
Why are mountains funny?
Mm-hmm.
They are tall.
No, they're hill areas.
Hey!
All right, we'll see you guys next time.